Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Arn right here on Westwood One. That means it must be Tuesday, and it means that the founder of the Four Horsemen, the Hall of Famer himself, Double A, the Enforcer, Arn Anderson is with us. Arn, how are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic. It's Tuesday, isn't it?
It is Tuesday, and you know what that means? It means it's time to walk back down memory lane with Arn Anderson. Today, we're not going too far back. We're going to Money in the Bank 2015. This one happened on June 14th, 2015 at Nationwide Arena in Columbus, Ohio. It's a sellout crowd, 13,000 fans on hand. 12,000 of those were paying. Columbus, Ohio is not necessarily a town we talk about a lot. It feels like we talk about Cleveland and other big markets, but Columbus was a big market for wrestling. And I mean, it's evident here with the 2015 sellout, right?
Yes, sir. A lot of history. If you go back and check the history, Columbus, going back to even when Ole was in charge of Georgia Championship Wrestling, and you know, the tours with Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer and all those guys on top, you go all the way back there that I can account for. Those have always been strong markets, you know, in Ohio. And Columbus, to this day, a lot of great wrestling fans in Columbus. They really support wrestling, and they come out in droves, and it's a good deal for everybody involved.
Of course, we're coming off the Elimination Chamber, which we've covered in the archives. You can check that over at adfreeshows.com. Ryback would win the Intercontinental title there over Dolph Ziggler, and Dean Ambrose would beat WWE champion Seth Rollins by DQ in the main event. And that sets up a rematch at Money in the Bank and a ladder match here. Of course, this is a battle of two former Shield members. And back when they were together, of course, Roman Reigns rounded out the group. If you were to have been a betting man when the Shield first debuted, who would you have bet would be the biggest breakout star of the trio?
God, probably like everyone else, the first glance at the trio, the very first time I saw him, you go, it's kind of hard to not look at Roman Reigns and go, damn, what a look.
Right.
And then you saw him move and you went, what an athlete. And the fact that they had him positioned as the killer, he would get plugged in and shut everything down. So everything was in place. But then you would start, I would start to look at the other two, at Ambrose and what he brought to the table. My nickname for him to this day is Crazy Man, because you never knew what that guy was going to do. And I'm sure his opponent never knew, and he never knew. It's what made it so unique. He was such a diversified, all over the place type worker. And I mean that in a positive sense. He would just go out and just keep coming and just keep doing things. And, the guys that could keep up with him ended up having a hell of a match, whether it was in 6-man form or singles or tags or whatever. Yeah. And you know what? Seth is that guy that can put the battle plan together. He is a very smart. He's a wrestler's wrestler. He thinks in terms of the big picture, the whole picture. How do I plug, myself in at the right times, and what do those guys on the other side, what do they bring to the table, and how to feature that? I mean, he is an architect. If he's going to sit down and put a match together, he's going to cover all the little things, which are the big things. And it's just like each one brought something different. Roman was the steamroller. Ambrose, you didn't know what to expect. He was going to just come out of nowhere with some excitement that you didn't see coming. And the one that was in there just regulating the flow of everything was Seth. So they had all the components in place. I loved watching those guys work with the Wyatts, because you had three guys on the other side that were completely different from all the Shield guys. And it was like 6 different psychologies and 6 different styles all in there mixing it up, and man, they would tear the joint down.
Really big time guys, as we know. I mean, going to be top of the cards for a long, long time. But let's mention someone else who's making some news that maybe didn't hit quite as big. Half Thor. Oh, I can't pronounce that last name. Either way, the giant from the Game of Thrones is someone the company's interested in. He actually spent a week training at the Performance Center, so he was at least trying to give it a shot, according to Meltzer. He would say one person who was watching his training closely told me it just didn't seem like he had his heart into it. He was shown sitting next to Stephanie McMahon at the NXT special. He's 6'9" and 400 pounds and only 26 years old. He grew up a basketball player who played center in Iceland's Pro League, but he blew out his knee, and then he started moving to strongman competitions, and he starts winning even after only a few years of training. He placed 6th in 2011 and then 3rd in both 12 and 13. He got 2nd in 14, and he started Game of Thrones in 2013, and he became a big star after that. I mean, he's got a 770 pound squat and a 510 bench press. This feels like the type of guy that wrestling promoters worldwide would have salivated over a few years prior to this, or a few generations prior to this rather. And now for whatever reason, it doesn't really work out, but man, this feels like something Vince McMahon would have been wringing his hands about, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the big body guys, that's what got his attention. His being, Vince. And sad part is, what the Fit Finleys of the world and myself and different guys that understand how valuable a team like the Shield would be, they look at a guy like that and they go, yeah, he's super strong, he's super tall, he's super big. Now we get to that part where he has to fall down.
Right.
And can this guy fall down and get back up? Can he even fall down? As silly as that may sound, Conrad, taking a crisp bump in that ring off of a piece of offense may appear to the naked eye to just be trivial. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Right.
And it's a double-edged sword for these guys that size, because they're being told every day of their life, hey, no matter what you do, work like a big guy, work like a big guy. Well, that's hard to understand if you're not in this business. To me, working like a big guy is like Kane or Undertaker. It's super strong, super explosive, super powerful, but also super mobile. And you move like an athlete, and you get up and down like an athlete, and your offense is explosive. It doesn't mean you walk around like Godzilla and just wobble and stagger. Our audience is not going to accept that anymore, and they're not going to pay to see it. And I would think that guy would have fit in one of those cases. I don't know how athletic he was. Being super strong in the weight room doesn't necessarily make you athletic for what we do, which is a combination of a lot of things. And like I said, I saw the guy once or twice, maybe backstage. I never saw him in the ring, so I don't know what his potential was, but sounds like he caught a hell of a break on that TV show, and good for him.
Yeah, and he would go on to win World's Strongest Man. He finished first in 2018. So He had some other great finishes, but he won it all in 2018. This is something that in hindsight is rather interesting. Meltzer writes, this isn't to say anything will transpire, but WWE has greatly changed their thoughts on AJ Styles. Styles considers New Japan his home right now, and he's under contract there, but WWE, with wanting 3 touring brands next year, looking to load up on as much quality talent as it can for 2016. Styles fits into the NXT philosophy in wanting athletic wrestling catering to a specific fan base, and as a separate brand with a part-time deal, the idea of someone 38 or so and developmental is a completely different dynamic than it was a year ago. The other advantage, and this is significant, is NXT works a lighter style for the most part. The idea that guys who are feeling the effects from years of working the blowaway matches on the indie scene or in Japan will be able to, at least in theory, use the names they developed in the hardcore community, but be able to work like Finn Balor does, which is good matches, getting over by rep, goodwill, and solid work without beating up their bodies as badly. With Styles, it may be a financial thing in the sense that he's probably making 3 to 4 times what anyone in NXT is pulling in, and he has more home time with his family than he'd have with a full-time WWE deal. So unless it's something like come in for a quick program between Japan tours, the idea of going full-time here makes no sense for either side unless it's a main roster spot with a good push. Well, we know how that worked out. AJ Styles is someone who was, considered TNA homegrown talent, even though he was in WCW for a cup of coffee at the end. And then a lot of people wondered, would he ever get a shot here? He had a couple of tryouts, and for whatever reason, Vince never pulled the trigger. Perhaps it was because of his supposed lack of size, but now he's really made a name for himself in TNA and even in New Japan, winning the big belt over there. Were you surprised when AJ came in? I mean, it felt like if it was going to happen, it probably would have happened by this point.
No, I wasn't surprised. I was pleasantly surprised, and I had pushed for AJ. There was a point in time when Cena had about run out of opponents, and I was on that whole ride with John, for all those years, more than a decade, I would imagine. And we were sitting there, and I was talking to him, and it was when TNA was doing well, and I would watch their show, not every week, not every other week, probably because I was just too busy and, suffering from burnout on wrestling. But I was sitting there with Cena one afternoon. We're sitting out there backstage at a table. I said, John, it would really beef up the company if we would go out and we would steal Bobby Roode, AJ Styles, and the Cowboy, who was Bobby Roode, James Storm. If you just brought those 3 guys in, it would just give you a whole plethora of new opponents. It would give a lot of guys new opponents. And that's just those 3 guys that I singled them out because of their work and their psychology and just things that I knew I could benefit helping them, and they would catch right on, and they would be a very, very good fit. And, the fact is, John looked at me and said, hey, we've got NXT, we make our own stars. And I'm sure he was just transferring, Vince's psychology to me when he said that. But I knew at that time what those guys could do in a match for John if you just gave them 6 to 9 months to come in and get over. But you would have to push them the right way, just like they were a fresh 25-year-old body guy that you had hoped the stars for, and that's what comes from the top. That's the deal. We want them young. We want them to have great physiques, great athletes, and we'll bring them in and we'll build them. Well, these guys had their experience. They already had their teeth cut on the indies, TNA. They were experienced. They were ready. You could bring them in day one, debut them on Raw, debut them on SmackDown, and you had a player. And so AJ Styles and Bobby Roode and Cowboy, they were all on my radar for a while before they ever made it.
Are you surprised that James Storm never really got a run? I mean, we know Bobby Roode has done great, not only in NXT, but on the main roster. Cowboy did a cup of coffee at NXT and then back out again. What do you think has kept James Storm away from WWE?
Well, I don't know if it was his choice, if the meeting didn't go the way he wanted it to go, if the money wasn't right. You never know in those situations. I saw him where he had came down to an arena close to his home, and I don't remember, where he lives or anything right now, but I just, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing here? How are you? Blah, blah, blah. You don't get to talk to anybody. They said, yeah, just sit tight. So, he had a meeting or two, I think. Any company, I would think, would benefit from having a veteran like that on their crew. And, if it's a guy that can get over and it's a guy that can go out there and day one give you a main event match, you're just ahead of the game. You don't have to groom that guy. You don't have to teach him. Just let him go and let him do what, you look at that lineup that's at NXT now. I would say there are a lot of guys that have a lot of experience on that crew and a few rookies the way it should be, instead of just having all rookies and one or two guys with some experience, which has been the case, throughout history.
Let's get to the actual show. But before we do, I want to bring up Dusty Rhodes. He passed away on June 11th, just a handful of days before this show, at the age of 69. You go way back with Dusty. You've told the famous story of your first time at the Crockett office and his advice to you. Tell me about your memories of his passing and the impact he had on your life and career.
Well, it was unexpected. You never expect a guy that's bigger than life to be taken just, and pretty quickly. It wasn't a long illness. If it was, no one knew about it, and I came into Crockett March, I think the 5th, 1985. And I had that meeting where, the communication was this: go get over. And that was the extent of it. And, Dusty put me in a position, especially when the Horsemen thing started to click, to work with nothing but top guys, including himself. And I got to learn the business from the best and from the hottest guys in the industry at the time, certainly with Jim Crockett Promotions. And, besides just being fun to be around, on the planes, on the private planes and stuff after the shows, having a couple of cocktails and just, us all lying like hell to each other and expecting us to believe it. And all the things that were the great part of the business, the camaraderie, it was like a fraternity. It was like a bunch of brothers, and the guys were all close and they looked out after each other, and, they cared about each other. And it was just a different time in the business. And, Dusty was just bigger than life, to this moment, sitting in this chair. I'm thinking back and how it felt to be in the ring and looking at that babyface dressing room door fly open, Dusty's music playing, him come down that aisle. I would be sitting there with goosebumps, and, back of my neck would be hot. It was like he was coming down. He was a big star, and he could get that audience, behind him, and it was just magic. And working with him would just taught you about what was important in this business, and it was connecting with the audience positively and negatively. And that was the most important thing. You could be a moderate worker with just a fair body, but if you could connect with the audience, you were going to draw money. It's the most important thing. You could learn that from Dusty. And selling was so high up on the list. And just all those things that we kind of skip around now. And, we've got these 6-minute short windows for a guy to go try to get over on TV. And it's not enough time. And Dusty would give us and give me enough time, whatever that number was, to go out, have my match, have my interview, even if it was 2:28. If you go back and you asked a real wrestling fan, go back to those interviews that we used to do talking about our angles and our opponents and all that, even though there were only 2:28, 3-minute interviews, did they seem too short to you? Most people will tell you no. They got their story told in that amount of time, whether it was one person or 3 people talking during that 2:28 to 3 minutes. It wasn't go out for 15 minutes and, remember a three sheet dichotomy. It wasn't one of those things where you had to go out and learn War and Peace between the hours of 2:00 and 8:00 and then go recite it. It was, if you had 1 minute, you had to nail your content, your opponent, your promo. Everything had to be contained in that 1 minute. And guys, that's how you got good. That's how you got professional. If that's all the time you had, you didn't take somebody else's time. You took yours and you made the most out of it. And I would just learn from Dusty, and nobody was better on that stick and talking them in the building than him. And that's one that just, they all hurt as far as the losses, because wrestlers go way before they should in a lot of cases. And that's one that will always be special. And it's one of those that just, when you get the news, you get kicked right in the stomach, and I don't know that you ever get over it.
The start of this pay-per-view is really a touching tribute. I mean, it's something we don't often see in wrestling, but we've got the entire company with Vince, Hunter, and Stephanie out front doing a very solemn 10-bell salute. And then at the end of that, they play Dusty's WWF Common Man theme, and Vince starts dancing around, and it gets the crowd pumped up. And about halfway through the show, they do an incredible, touching tribute of Dusty highlights. And man, when WWE wants to honor somebody and do it in video form like this, and then the big 10-bell salute, I don't know that anybody does it better than Vince when he wants to.
No, of course not. And with all of the production quality and values and ability, those guys that put those specials together in Stamford, they make stars out of the guys. And when they really want to put something emotional out there, man, they can do it. And they're, unsung heroes that probably don't get enough credit. But that was always one of the things that separated the WWF or the WWE, whatever it may be, from everyone else, was their production values. It was just, you want to build a package, you call the guys in Stamford, 24 hours, they got you a world-class package that just makes you look even more of a superstar than you really were. And sometimes it just puts you in a whole other stratosphere. And you want to put something emotional together. What better subject matter for our audience than Dusty Rhodes?
Let's get to the matches here on the show. First up, we got R-Truth pinning King Barrett on a pre-show match, 5 minutes, 47 seconds. Barrett comes out with a new royal outfit. He calls R-Truth the village idiot. Meltzer would say it's a decent match. He gave it a star and 3/4. R-Truth, is we've said a lot about him here on the show. We love R-Truth. I hope he wrestles forever. He adds a lot to every program. He steals a scene. He, as JR would say, makes the most of his minutes. But King Barrett, this is a guy who has started to flirt a little bit online with Drew McIntyre. The idea that, hey, maybe he does want to come back to wrestling. Maybe he does want to challenge his old pal for the world title, or the universal title, as it were. Are you surprised that Barrett has stayed away as long as he has? I really assumed, that Barrett might have popped up in AEW or somewhere else. We saw him do some commentary with the NWA, but I'm still shocked he hasn't gone back to WWE or done something with AEW. What can you tell us about Wade Barrett, King Barrett, whatever you want to call him?
Well, I'm not going to call him King Barrett, because to me, that is such a dated gimmick. So cheesy. I haven't seen anyone, probably besides Booker T, who became King of the Ring, and actually got some heat and some entertainment value out of being king of the ring. But it's because Booker just had all that personality that he could bring to it. For someone to try to get legitimate heat, like a Wade Barrett, who had good size, he had good promos, his work was good, his pacing was good, all that did was hurt him, in my estimation, because it's just a cheesy, dated gimmick that maybe at one time was meant to put heat on a guy, but now it's just a guy coming to the ring with a crown, in a robe, and a staff, and it's the same thing. I mean, how many things can you do in that get up to get heat? And I think it probably left a bad taste in Wade's mouth. You know, if that's all they could do was to come up with him. The Nexus thing was kicking ass. If they would have left that alone and gave it the same attention that you were going to give, say, a tag team that you were putting with Bobby Heenan, to try to get them, you know, a shot in the ass right away and give them a good shove and get some good heat on them. You know, if you were going to go that route, okay. But the Nexus guys were all young guys that could have ran another year, and people recognized Wade being like the head of that group. And it was just because of his mic skills, you know, and he felt like a guy that would be in charge, that could impose his will on his opponents and, you know, direct his guys into a successful attack. And you had some young studs in that group. I think the biggest fumble was breaking up the Nexus way before their time. And I think Wade probably got a bad taste in his mouth about the business because he knew he had ability. He knew he had all the tools, and they still weren't using him worth a crap. And for a talent that's not in this business, just to be on TV and be a big shot in their neighborhood and get recognized going through airports and all those trivial things, for a guy that wants to learn this business and be a player over a decade or a decade and a half and be a top guy and wrestle all the top guys and be the best he can possibly be from a performance standpoint, where you have him talking about your matches a decade later or 2 decades later, or your interview skills. You know, my feeling was Wade probably wanted to aspire to be as good as he could possibly be, because he always asked questions. And he was never seemed like he was happy with his performance 100%, which I respect, because you never should be. You never should be 100% that couldn't get any better. If you can't get any better, you're getting worse. And that's my feeling. I don't know, you'd have to ask Wade, but I think he was an incredible talent that was not realized, and it wasn't his fault.
Next up, we've got the Money in the Bank ladder match. It's got Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, Neville, Kofi Kingston, Kane, Dolph Ziggler, and Sheamus becomes the winner. 20 minutes and 32 seconds. Man, these are car crash matches, and there are some dangerous bumps here. Kingston took a bad bump when Sheamus knocked him off a ladder. He's supposed to catch his neck on the top rope on the way down, but lands short and awkward. And a lot of the match has guys hanging around the outside and leaving the ring to only a few people. But it's a dangerous deal. Are you glad that Money in the Bank matches didn't exist when you were in the ring?
Well, I'm certain I wouldn't have been a candidate for it, for sure.
Well, I mean, come on, man. They got fucking Kane in these. Kane shouldn't be a candidate. Here he is.
Well, I don't think you see Kane getting backdropped off the top of a ladder out to the floor either.
There you go.
You know, he may pick up a ladder and just cream everybody in the area code. You know, there's spots you can do for a guy like Kane where he's not having to climb the ladders and take those big bumps and stuff. I'm sure it's not his favorite. It's probably, you know, not one of those things he enjoys doing. And to be honest with you, you know, I wouldn't have excelled at that, because, you know, I go in with the fear of this to this day. When I see a TLC match or I see a ladder match, the one thing you cannot account on and be 100% sure about is how those things are going to break, when they break, how is that piece of metal, that secures them? How is that going to break? Which way is it going to go? Is that ladder going to hold all that weight that's put on it? Say a Kane and somebody else, a big guy, climb that ladder and they get up top and let's say somebody pushes it over. When it hits that top rope, if in fact that's what's going to happen, how's it going to kick you off? Because the weight is so distributed so unequally. I mean, there's so many unknowns to that match. It just scares me to death. And you certainly can't go into a match where you're going to try to entertain and be safe and tell a story if you're scared to death. And I would be. That's just being honest. I'm not a walking kitty cat. Throw me off the roof, I'm not going to hit on my feet. Pretty good chance I'm going to hit on my back and let out one of the most guttural sounds you ever heard. So even though I enjoy watching these matches, it scares me to death for the talent that are in them because it's just so many unknowns.
The match gets 3.5 stars. Sheamus, grabs the win here. It's pretty remarkable when you think about, all the craziness that can happen in these matches. And it feels like we've got to try to play, can you top this? We should also mention fans were going crazy when Bray Wyatt hits the ring. The lights go out, and then when they come back on, Bray's here. Wyatt shoves Reigns off the ladder, hits the Sister Abigail. Fans are cheering like crazy because they've cost Roman Reigns the win. This Roman Reigns heat with fans and fans just spitting him up. Did your opinion on this ever change? I mean, I feel bad for the guy, and I know I feel bad for a millionaire. I mean, he's doing very, very well for himself, but he's working hard. He's doing everything he's asked to do. But what fans are sort of pushing away from is the creative, not necessarily his execution, right?
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with his ability to work. And I've seen many house shows where Roman would get the same partial booing. You don't notice it as much in the live events because the pro reactions versus the con reactions are probably 80-20 on the pro side.
Right.
For TV, a lot of stuff gets pumped in just because that's the way they want the audience to react, even though they're not reacting that way. It's force the reactions on the TV show when they're really not happening to the degree, that it appears they are. Roman, number one, he comes through the curtain, he looks like a friggin' movie star. If your girlfriend is sitting beside you, she's probably going to stand up at least for the first time of the night, but for sure she's going to go, who is that?
Right.
Which pisses most adult males, which is our audience, pisses them off. And Roman is a hell of an athlete, and he sells well, and he has no weaknesses in his work. But the fact of the matter is, Roman should have came through that curtain. To this day, if he had a promo, it was 1 or 2 or 3 Clint Eastwood lines, uncontested, and then he just kicks ass. He's a Samoan killing machine, and that's who he should have been. And when you try flipping guys back and forth from heel to babyface, the audience gets confused. They don't know who they can trust. They don't really know what a guy's attitude is because he flip-flops so much. It's not like you had faith in a guy. Roman Reigns should either still be a babyface from the first time they turned him right now and with no switches in between, or he should still be an ass-kicking heel, and you have that one turn that makes you special and different because it comes at a time that nobody expected it. Now I'll give you an example. Let's just say Roman had been a babyface all this time, and people used to do it forever. You never saw Dusty turn heel, did you?
No. Oh, you did briefly in the NWO, but it was terrible.
Didn't count.
No.
That was just throwing bodies out there. Dusty was a career babyface. Hogan, career babyface till the NWO turn, right? These guys that were bigger than life, and they had that one turn when Hogan had that one NWO turn, it was massive. Now let's just say, and we're doing our Monday morning quarterback in here like you and I do sometimes. Let's just say Roman was a babyface all this time. Well, Roman has been out now for a while, with this pandemic. The guy's taking care of his family and his priorities, and that's his number one deal. What if when Roman came back, because, he's had a groundswell of people that support his decision, obviously. What if the guy came back and day one was his first heel turn? He's been a babyface all this time. What if that was his first heel turn, with the caveat that how dare you try to second guess me where my family's concerned and tell me where I should be and when I should wrestle, when it's safe and when it's not, and all these unknowns. Piss on all of you. You think you might have some heat?
Yes, sir.
And I know it's a lot to go back and say, but, guys flip-flop now almost every 6 months. God, a talent like Seth Rollins, how many times has he been babyface? It'd be interesting to get your research, guys. How many times has he been a heel or a babyface? Have they flip-flopped him back? How many, different groups of guys has he been with? There's a guy that's a diamond. Just polish him up. You don't need to try to change his chemical makeup. And I just think that the Shield guys, you see how special Ambrose is being himself right now.
Right.
And what he's doing, you got to recognize, when you got a racehorse, let them run. That's it. Don't have them trotting. Don't have them pulling a carriage. You got a racehorse here. Swat him in the ass and let him run. And I think Roman has been given promo material, for a guy that looks like that and can perform like that, to ever mouth the words suffering succotash should be at least a felony in most states. And that's for the person that wrote the line for him.
Well, we know who that is. Go ahead.
Well, it had to be. It could only be one person.
3.5 stars here. Sheamus winning the briefcase is paying off what was written in the plan for last year. The idea, according to a former creative team member, Kevin Eck, said that he pitched the idea of Sheamus winning last year to Vince McMahon, and his idea was that the babyface Sheamus winning would set up the long planned heel turn based on him cashing in on a babyface champion to unfairly at some point. Originally, Sheamus was to turn heel and face Bryan at WrestleMania, but when Punk leaves and the fact that crowds were killing Batista, Bryan's creative chains, and Sheamus is left out. Then Sheamus was going to win the briefcase at Money in the Bank, and then Bryan got hurt and Money in the Bank became for the vacant title, so it changed again. And the champion was chosen based on who the best person to drop the title to Brock Lesnar would be, and the feeling at that point was it should be the biggest marquee star, John Cena. Where Rollins got the nod, and look at how that turned out, is at first they were only going to do one Money in the Bank match only for the title. When the decision was made to do a second one with a title shot at stake, Sheamus had already been slotted in the first one, and they didn't want to change it. So Sheamus wins Money in the Bank here. Finally, feels like a long time coming. And Sheamus is another one of those talents where, for whatever reason, it feels like the fans sort of soured on him quickly just because of the push coming from the office, but very nice guy behind the scenes, very capable performer, has a very cool look. And for whatever reason, fans are just sort of lukewarm on him here. Is this a case of too much babyface, too much heel, or too much push too soon for the fans, do you think?
Well, I don't think too much push is the wrong thing to do. If you want a guy to be a star, bring him in like a star, have him work with the stars, give him that get over period, which is never long enough, that slow build. And I go back to two guys that it worked with, and I've said this before, I went on record. Two of your more successful heels for their era would have been Umaga who got over huge, but he won every week. He went out and he kicked ass. Rusev is another guy that I pushed very, very hard, had many conversations because they tried to back off on it. And the only reason they didn't is because John was in favor of it. Rusev went for a year without getting beat. So the first time he got beat by Cena, it mattered.
Right.
And it meant something. I think, Sheamus, the one mistake Sheamus does is he's a good, solid worker, but as a heel, the art in being a heel is getting your ass kicked when it's time. And I mean, taking a royal ass kicking. You can do the bully stuff and you can do the snug stuff and you can overpower guys. That's fine. But there comes in every match where you got to get your ass whipped, and your top heels know how to do that. And when they get their ass kicked, it's in a royal fashion. I don't think Sheamus gets that concept. He wants to get all of his offense in, no matter whatever's in his mind for that night, no matter what the audience is giving him back or what it calls for. And sometimes you got to be really, really giving as a heel, even though you are this big, rugged, kick-ass heel. You got to give them faith in that babyface, because once the heel overpowers the babyface to the point that the audience loses faith in them, forget it. Match is over.
Let's get to the next match. It's Nikki Bella and Paige for the Divas title. Nikki winds up getting the win in 10 minutes and 58 seconds. Meltzer would say the match was fine, but the finish made no logical sense. Not to mention that Paige said she was dedicating this match to Dusty Rhodes and then goes out and loses. Bella's went for twin magic once again. Brie gives Paige a small package after a switch, but Paige reverses it into her own small package and gets the 3 count and is announced as the champion. Brie then protests and shows the ref that she wasn't Nikki by pulling all kinds of tissue paper out of her bra, and then she showed her tattoo. The only thing close to logic here would be a title-saving DQ finish, but instead, the ref orders the match to continue. Nikki lays out Paige with a forearm, followed by the rack attack for the pin 33 seconds into the restart. Meltzer says they put them on early and gave them time, but the crowd didn't get into this much, but it was better than an average WWE women's match. Of course, we know this summer is when the whole women's revolution and Give Divas a Chance is going to start trending and become a big thing. But I thought this match was pretty good. And I do agree with Meltzer's theory that it should have been a DQ finish and maybe not restarted. But I liked the finish, especially with it being a quote unquote dusty finish. And I know that maybe Meltzer didn't like that, but I thought it was a pretty creative little finish. What'd you think?
I'm sure the match was fine, but I got to agree with Meltzer. You either got to, all the time we're hearing as producers, can't bury the referee. Don't bury the referee. So many things that don't even bury the referee get your ass chewed out after it's all over. This is one of those deals where you made the referee look like a moron.
Yeah.
You're either going to protect the referee every match, every night, or you're not. Don't give me that, okay, well, this is creative liberty bullshit. That's one of those that if the referee is not just the village idiot, he figures out what happened. There's your DQ, title is saved, and you leave the babyface down. It's, it didn't work. Referee saw through it, DQ'd it. That way you protect the ref. You can't have hit and miss on this deal with the refs. They either have to have real authority, and if something that it was clear they should have known or seen causes a DQ, okay. To go back, to me, that just left a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
I agree with the idea of having the match restarted, but the little twin magic thing, I don't know, that worked for me. I dug it.
That's where we can agree to disagree.
Let's get to the next match for the Intercontinental title. It's Ryback defending against the Big Show. As a reminder, the Intercontinental title was vacant at the Elimination Chamber, and Ryback wins that. So on the June 1st Raw, before Ryback is scheduled to defend the title against Miz, Big Show attacks Miz and confronts Ryback, and here we are. They go 5 minutes and 27 seconds. Ryback picks up the win by DQ. The Miz is ringside doing commentary. Ryback is going to throw Miz over the announcer's table at one point. Show hits Ryback with a spear. Ryback reverses him, goes for an arm bar. The highlight of the match was Ryback suplexing Show. Ryback kicks out of a choke slam. Show knocks out Ryback, who then falls out of the ring. Show throws Ryback into the ring, and then Miz attacks Show, which causes the ref to throw the match out. 3/4 of a star. It's a nice little match, but it feels like a TV match. What say you?
Well, the only thing that came from it, and okay, if we would have done what I said had the DQ in the match right before it, you couldn't have very well had one here, could you?
Right.
So, I mean, some of that thinking might have went into that. Who knows? But I know this: Big Show, when healthy, and even when not healthy, and as hard as in it, can make any guy just by taking a big ass, huge, unexpected bump for that guy, because he is a real giant. I mean, he's a huge man, and you got a guy that looks like Ryback when he still gets in the ring with Show. You know, he looks like a flea on the beach. Show's just that big, and Ryback looks incredible. So for Show to take those big bumps for Ryback actually made him in the body of the match. You know, DQs are what they are. They kind of, it's like kissing your sister. Nobody's really satisfied with those. And the idea to plug Miz in for a 3-way going forward looks like an obvious setup, and that at least Miz can get in and get his ass handed to him for most of that match to create the excitement. So there was some rhyme or reason to it. It was still short and really didn't leave anybody satisfied.
Well, the next one does. The U.S. champion John Cena is going to pin the NXT champion Kevin Owens in 19 minutes and 13 seconds. This is the match to go out of your way to see from this show. If you're going to watch one more match from this show, you should watch this one again. Meltzer would give it 4.5 stars. I think that might even be a little light. He writes, the crowd felt like it was 90% pro Owens, and they were electric. Owens did all of Cena's moves, including the 5-knuckle shuffle. Owens tried an attitude adjustment, but Cena reversed it into an STF. Owens used a code breaker for a near fall. It's weird that he'd use Jericho's finisher, he writes. Cena came back with the 5-knuckle shuffle, then goes for the attitude adjustment, but Owens gets away, hits a German suplex and a cannonball into the corner. Owens goes for the swanton, but Cena gets his knees up. Cena hits the attitude adjustment for the first time for a near fall, and then he's yelling at referee Mike Chioda about the count being slow. Cena tries an attitude adjustment off the middle rope, but Owens gets out and uses a power bomb for a near fall. He tries the pop-up power bomb, but Cena reverses it into a Hurricane Rana. Owens then super kicks Cena, and Cena is cut near the right eye. Owens uses a package side slam since the package pile driver has been banned for a near fall. And at that point, Jerry Lawler said Owens came from virtual obscurity to beating John Cena 2 weeks ago. Way to bury NXT, Jerry. Cena did the attitude adjustment for a second time. Owens kicks out. Owens reverses an attempted Cena suplex into the Death Valley bomb off the middle ropes for a near fall. And then Cena used the infrared for another near fall. Owens finally hits the pop-up power bomb, but Cena kicks out. Cena comes back with that stunner and a third attitude adjustment and finally gets the pin. After it's over, Cena said that Owens belongs here and that he's a real champion. He raises Owens' hand and shakes his hand, and then Owens attacks Cena, gives him the power bomb onto the ring apron, and he leaves with both the US and the NXT belts, and he's laughing at Cena, and the crowd is going crazy for this post-match attack. Cena has to be helped to the back. Of course, he's limping, and Meltzer gave it 4.5 stars. I was actually at this show, and on the way there, I listened to a podcast where Stone Cold was interviewing Michael P.S. Hayes. And Michael Hayes said the way he knew a match was good is when you could make the fans stand up and sit down. And as I looked around this night, this match had fans standing up and sitting down more than any other. They took them on a ride. They took them on a story, but they hit every finish under the moon. So I'm not sure what you thought about it. What'd you think?
Well, my thinking is always more conservative than the talents. But I will have, hopefully, on the end of this little diatribe, have at least a comment that makes sense. Number one, I've said earlier tonight and said in other podcasts, can't go wrong if you give the audience what they want. 2 weeks ago, I think they did too much, but the right guy went over, that being Kevin Owens. This night, even though they did all this stuff, the audience is 90% Kevin Owens. Give them what they want. Put Owens over. By Cena going over, it's just what the norm was of the time. It wasn't about, okay, who's going to benefit the most. You wouldn't have killed John Cena off to beat him again. They did so many bombs and so many big moves and so many things just to get a pop that they took all these big offensive moves and they neutered them.
Right.
Now they're not finishes. And once you take some guy's finish and you just kick out, excuse me a sec, clean this up. Please.
Yeah, no problem.
Take that out.
Yeah.
Once you do another guy's moves on him, it's confusing because a lot of fans know what a guy's offense is, and a lot of them really don't, and it all kind of runs together. And if I'm doing all of Cena's moves and he's doing all of my moves to me, there's a large portion of that crowd that's going to be confused. And I believe that. And certainly you're neutering all those big offensive moves down to just high spots. And once they become high spots, you can't go back and make them finishes again. Something's either a kill shot or it's not. They told you what they wanted that night, that audience, and they wanted Kevin Owens to go over. He should have went over because in my mind, John Cena is a guy that always does the right thing, and he's the one that takes care of the kids, and he does all this, white meat babyface stuff. For him to say Kevin Owens is a champion and he belongs here, and then to get it shoved up his ass and then they pop again, if that don't tell you that's what you should have done versus what you did, nothing will. And you had a chance to have this guy, if he would have taken that third match and in a shitty way or not, maybe not even, Kevin Owens was with John Cena in those 3 matches I think they had in a row. For him to beat John Cena, all 3 of those matches, you would have had a hell of a baby face on your hands. He should have never done anything heelish, in my mind. And you would have had a red hot commodity because the audience bought it. They really did. And for John to do that promo and then get it, it's like gullible John. He says something nice about somebody and gets his head taken off for it. I don't think that does Cena any favors either, to be honest with you.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, they did have a trilogy here. They started at Elimination Chamber. Owens goes up here. Cena goes up at Money in the Bank, and then Battleground is next. And we know John Cena wins that. So Cena wins 2 of the 3 with Owens getting the first one, but Kevin Owens was just happy to be there. He did an interview with CBS Radio where he said, "My son's a big John Cena fan and obviously a big fan of mine. He's proud of everything I'm accomplishing. A big reason why I signed with WWE in the first place was because my son wanted to see me wrestle in WWE and he wanted to see me wrestle John Cena. So now he gets to see it. I don't know if he realized what it would entail, that it would entail me beating up John Cena and Cena trying to beat me up. I'm sure it's a bit conflicting feelings here and there for him, but he's proud of everything that's happening and he's really loving seeing me on WWE TV every week." And regarding Cena, he said, "Anybody who says that he's not a very good professional wrestler and a very good performer all around is kidding themselves." I like the idea that we get a peek behind the curtain and we hear about this real life aspect. Did anything like that happen with your kids? Like where they had a favorite wrestler? Maybe when you jumped to the WWF, did your oldest have a favorite wrestler and then you beat him up, or were your youngest son? Was he a big Sting fan, something like that?
No, just, the one thing that I remember, and he was 3 or 4 at the time when I was wrestling for WWF, and we ran Charlotte. This was when Hulk was huge and bronze. And this would have been 88, probably 89, one of the two, I don't remember. So I took my 3 or 4-year-old Barrett, my oldest son, down to meet Hulk. And I don't know if he just said to me, Dad, it's Hulk Hogan here. It was just something. And I said, I don't know. Let's see. Come with me. And I never took him in the back and all that stuff very often, because it was just, we were always concentrating on
work.
And, you come to work. You don't come to socialize. So I knocked on the door. Yeah. This voice. Yeah. Hulk, it's Arn. You got a second? And he opened the door and he looked 10 feet tall to that 3-year-old. And I'll never forget the look on his face. It was like out of a comedy high spot. He started looking at his knees and his head just went up to as far as his neck would bend. And I said, can you shake Hulk's hand? Yes, brother. And he stuck his hand out and Barrett shook his hand. It was just one of those cool things that was real. And that little boy just saw a superhero. And that was one of those things that was really cool that I remember.
Well, what a great story. Let's talk
simplistic, but great.
It is great because listen, we all had that same fandom as kids, and the idea that, your kids got to have a peek behind the curtain and meet some of their superhero. I mean, when I was a little kid, it would have been the greatest day of my life to me, Hulk Hogan, and the idea that it got to happen and my dad introduced me to him. That's a cool story, man. I'm sure he's still proud of that story today.
Yeah, as am I. It made his day. And that's what we should be doing in the entertainment industry, is making people's day.
I'm really glad that we had this talk because I feel like sometimes, especially, we're all adults now and we're trying to armchair quarterback all this and poke holes in shit and stuff like that. But at the root of it, man, it's all about, I hate the corny putting smiles on people's faces, but hearing Kevin Owens talk about, my kid wanted me to fight John Cena. That means he's got John Cena action figures and all that. And now he gets to see his dad fight what in his mind is a real life superhero. That's pretty freaking cool, man.
Yeah, it is. Of course it is. And imagine if the company would have got behind that and shoved him hard as a babyface.
Oh, it would have been huge.
Imagine how hot the guy was. Now, during all these 3 matches, this guy's trying to be a heel.
Right.
And the audience is fighting them tooth and nail. Always do what the audience wants, and you can't go wrong. Now, that's not my quote. That was given to me. And I learned from that. One of the things I learned, do what the audience wants. Give them what they want. It's insane to fight the crowd. Give them what they want. And sometimes, since you have the beauty of live television, you have the ability of changing it on a dime. Do it.
Yeah, I think JR's famous line is, the most powerful weapon in wrestling is the eraser.
You bet.
Titus O'Neil and Darren Young, the primetime players, are going to take on the New Day here, Big E and Xavier Woods. And believe it or not, primetime win the tag titles in 5 minutes and 49 seconds. Meltzer would say, not much to this. E tackled Young to the floor. O'Neil gets the hot tag and ran wild. Woods hit the Clash of the Titus for the pin. They were put in a tough spot after the last match, and fans didn't really react to most of the match. In a sense, this seemed to be the wrong time to take the titles off New Day, but the primetime players hadn't been pushed in a long time, and with Tyson Kidd injured, the New Day desperately need new opponents. The decision was made to go with primetime players over Lucha Dragons for this spot, and they had no credibility at this point with the fans as far as being serious title contenders. So for the good of getting a long program going, they really needed the win more than New Day did. Plus, I don't think there's any doubt New Day will be getting the belts back are going to be phased down right now. Of course, we know that's not what's coming for New Day. I don't think anybody could have predicted the run that New Day had. I mean, they were one of the biggest acts in company history, seemingly by accident. I mean, it didn't feel like the company was putting much steam behind them, but the fans got with them, and man, they were off to the races.
Yeah, and those guys think about what they're doing. They're entertaining. You can tell every one of them are having fun, and they all bring something different to the table. In the entertainment portion of it, they're all good athletes. You know, that friggin' Big E is a monster. My God, that guy's strong in the weight room. You know, Woods is very entertaining, and Kofi is the all-around cowboy, man. He can, he can sell, he can make comebacks. When he smiles, he lights up the room. You know, they got everything in that group, and those guys they pretty much just forced themselves a break because they were getting over and they were working hard and doing some incredible stuff. And I think their evolution going forward is what you will always remember, that these guys got over the old-fashioned way. They worked for it, and they put their time in, and they contributed, all these positive things, and the audience loves them.
They announced Reigns versus Wyatt for Battleground, which is kind of cool here because we saw the build up for this match earlier in the show. So I'm liking that they do this. And then we see a Kane promo where he's saying to Seth Rollins, he couldn't wait for him to lose. Stephanie McMahon tells Rollins that they've got a lot invested in him, and if he loses, they'll have nobody to blame but him. And Triple H gives Rollins the big motivational speech like a college coach, which pretty much guaranteed he was winning, since Triple H is not wasting that speech on a guy who is going to lose. That all according to Dave Meltzer. Of course, here it is. It's the big ladder match with Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. They get a ton of time, over 35 minutes. Seth Rollins retains. It is a big moment. It gets 4 stars. Meltzer called it an excellent match. What'd you think?
Yeah, he was right. He's dead on. They killed it. Off the charts as far as the creativity and the selling and just the difference in styles, but blending them together, and each guy now they did what you should do is they took every one of their offensive moves, not the opponents, and they put them in places where they went, and they were true false finishes. And there's a big difference of me recognizing one of Seth's moves and him hitting that move out of nowhere, and me going, that's got to be it. Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. 1, 2 out. Versus Seth hitting one of Dean's moves and me going, well, wait a minute. And while I'm going through that thought process, isn't that Dean's move? By the time it happens, you've already had the landing, the cover, the kick out, and most people are still sitting there. What did I just see? These guys are featuring all their own stuff and their conflicting styles, and it was just, the intensity was just incredible. And it's one of those that I can always learn from. If I watched it 10 times in a row, I would learn something new each time I watched it. These guys are just that good. And it was a treat for the audience. It was a treat for the business. And every guy out there that aspires, to be the best worker in the business, which everybody should aspire to be if they have that capability, watch this match and just watch the story that's told.
We should mention Ambrose and Rollins are at the top of the ladder fighting for the belt. They both pull it down at the same time and fall to the floor with it, but Rollins winds up with the possession of the belt first. It's almost like a couple of guys looking for a loose fumble in football. Rollins is the winner. I thought it was a home run. The readers of the Wrestling Observer agreed when it came to the best match poll. They voted in a runaway that it was Cena Owens, but the only other match that got any votes was Rollins Ambrose. So our main event gets 4 stars. That Cena match does even better at 4.5. I think this is a very, very underrated pay-per-view. It was an overwhelming thumbs up from the readers of the Observer. They gave it 73.4% thumbs up, only 17.4% thumbs down, and 9.2% thumbs in the middle. Almost everyone agreed that Big Show and Ryback had the worst match, but this is a fun pay-per-view. Time flew by watching this one again. What'd you think overall? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle?
No, the one thing I like is when you build a show like a match, least to most, And that's pretty much what you got. You know, the last two matches, just, I'm sure before the audience filed out of there, when that show was over, a lot of people had to just sit down, catch their breath, because they had two matches back to back that just killed it. The talent all worked hard throughout the show. Everybody doesn't have a story, and that's the biggest crime of all, being on a pay-per-view without a story or a history, just in a cold match that you're just two people thrown together. It's hard to go out and come behind a match that really does have a good story and has had a 2-month build, and there's some heat on the match and all that. It's unfair to put them in a match after that is like a placeholder. There shouldn't be any placeholders on pay-per-views, if you ask me.
I can't recommend this show enough, especially those two matches. Really, really good stuff. Next week, we'll be back with another hashtag Ask Arn Anything. If you want to join the conversation, just follow us on Twitter. It's easy and free to ask your question to Arn. It's at The Arn Show on Twitter. One more time, that's at The Arn Show. Until next time, I am at Hey, it's Conrad, and we are out of time. We'll see you next week right here on Arn. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.